back to the Law and Crime Network. I'm Michael Bryant. Good to have you along. Happy Veterans Day, and thank you for your service. If you are so inclined, it's a holiday for some, but we're working hard here, trying to bring you up to speed on a couple of cases we're following in Florida. The Matthew Terry case will resume on Monday. Of course, this is the case in which Mr. Terry is accused of killing his girlfriend. The 47-year-old defendant apparently had an altercation with her the night before. This happened just in May of 2022. Yeah, just months ago. There was no waiver of the speediness trial requirement in this case. So the defendant's charged with first-degree murder, looking at possible death penalty here for the alleged crimes. He bit, he beat, he stabbed Baker, according to the prosecution, all after an argument at a bar in which there was maybe some attempt to dance with another guy. Hey, don't dance with another guy or you'll die. That's the prosecution's theory in a nutshell here. There was a blood-soaked T-shirt that she was found in. It was just outside the defendant's home. There's a window, in fact, that looks like somebody escaped from. And was caught soon after. Again, all part of the prosecution's case. So, earlier this week, we heard testimony from Kelly Devers. Now, this is the doctor that was called to talk about the wounds that were found on the defendant himself. Remember, I'm going to point this out again, they never found the murder weapon in this case. I might have it here in the studio, and we're going to look at it and talk about it. They didn't find one. It's not in evidence at the trial. They've just talked about it. And so think about it in the context of wounds found on the defendant himself. That was the focus of this witness's testimony. Let's watch.
By a detective, Kevin Ratu, somewhere around August 16th, to look at a series of photos to see if you could discern anything about whether or not a wound might or might not have been self-inflicted.
Yes.
Your Honor, can I approach?
You may.
Doctor, I'm going to provide you 2 packets of photos, 27A through F and 21A through H. I'm going to let you look through them. And if you see any photos that you've ever previously looked at, if you could please just pull those ones aside. But don't confuse them between packets.
Do you need some water, Doctor?
Yes, please.
All right, might be able to give you some. Sorry about that.
I remember all these photos.
So you've seen all of these photos?
Yes.
All right. So I'll have them both here at the ready. I want to ask you, when you looked at these photos, what specifically were you looking at in the photos and what were you trying to determine, if anything?
I was asked to look at the wounds of not the person who the autopsy was performed on, but another person to offer an opinion.
And so were you looking in particular at, as depicted here in States 21B, the neck wounds on this individual?
Yes.
And so just sort of preliminarily, what, if anything, do you notice about these neck wounds? What could you tell us about the cause or what led to these neck wounds?
These neck wounds appear consistent with a blade injury or a sharp instrument.
And so how do you determine that? Is there something that you're seeing? And if I need a different picture, please tell me. I'm happy to put up a different picture. Is there something you're seeing that says these are blade wounds?
Yes, the edges of the wounds, where they're gaping, you can see the margins of those wounds are smooth. They do not look like tears in the skin or lacerations.
So we're hearing so much about the wounds, not just the horrifying wounds to Kay Baker, who died in this case, but also now the wounds that were suffered by Matthew Terry, self-inflicted, say the prosecution. So wouldn't it be great to have the weapon that was used to cause these wounds? We've seen many cases where the murder weapon is never found, and you move on, and it's not insurmountable. But because of the nature of these wounds and injuries, it'd be nice to see the knife. So I can't say this is the knife, but I can tell you this. This is a 3.5-inch bird beak paring knife, which is the exact knife that if I hold it right here, it'll get the glint of steel on it, that the prosecution talked about in their opening statement. So you can see how this is, you use this to peel an apple, but in the context of this case, that's a nasty looking, it's almost like a sickle or a scythe, perhaps. It's just, this is apparently very sharp. And according to the prosecution, a weapon like this, again, this was missing from the kitchen block, the knife block, and so they're making those assumptions. But again, it was not found. I think it's important to know what it looks like and how it might have been used in this case. That's what I'm thinking anyway, Richard Schoenstein. What do you think about the importance of not having the weapon in this case?
First of all, Michael, I'm glad to join you in the studio today. You brought a knife.
You scooted a little further away.
And think, because you found the body, you found all the blood stains, there's all this stuff on the grass, you found the defendant, he's got injuries, he's in blood. Underwear, it's sort of weird. Where is the knife? It is one thing that would give you pause. The only suggestion that could it have been that there was somebody else involved in this or somebody else who did it and left with the knife, and that's why the knife is gone? I mean, presumably they did as good a search as you could and couldn't come up with it. So it is a little bit of a problem in what otherwise seems like a pretty compelling case.
Yeah, and we'll have to see when the defense puts on a case. If they do, independent of their cross-examination of the prosecution witnesses, maybe they float that out there. Maybe that could very well happen. Hey, joining us here today is Katherine Lizardo. She is in the Fort Worth, Dallas, Texas area. Katherine, always good to have you along. What do you think about this case, the missing murder weapon, and any defense theories that might be helped by that fact?
Well, first of all, I'm glad I'm working remotely here and not next to your knife.
I think that says more about me than the knife. I'm not quite sure what you're trying to say, but okay.
When they did their opening, it didn't really give us much as to what they're going to present. The cross-examinations, they've been asking the witnesses, for example, as to the mental stability of the defendant, gives us a glimpse as to maybe they're going to present that and say that he was unstable at the moment. The way he was found by the police, where he was crouched somewhere and the dogs had to find him and he had wounds on him, makes you wonder what was going on at the time that he was found by the police.
Yeah, and as we heard from one of the earlier witnesses, the wounds to the defendant were pretty serious. It wasn't like he wasn't committed, if in fact the defendant did it. It seems like he was committed to creating wounds that might lead to the belief that somebody else did it. That's where we are in this trial at the moment. We'll see if the defense capitalizes on that. Let's listen now to more of Dr. Devers. Again, we're talking about the wounds found on the defendant.
The State's Exhibit 27A. If you need to get closer, feel free. Can you see that there's blood in Matthew Terry's nose?
Yes, it looks like there's some.
Is it common for a person's nose to bleed when they've been punched?
Yes.
Putting up what is already admitted as State's Exhibit 27B, is that one of the wounds on the side of Matthew Terry's neck?
That's one of the photos that I looked at, yes.
Showing you what's already been admitted as State's Exhibit 27C. I can't tell from the positioning, so can you tell me if that is the same wound or the other wound as the one we just looked at in 27B?
Well, you can see the oxygen cannula, and to the right of that would be the wound, because that's the bottom of the cannula.
So is that the same one as in the previous photo, or
I think it was the left side we looked at before.
Okay, so this is the second one. And in addition to those wounds that are on each side of his neck, you were also shown photographs of, which right now is admitted as 27D for the state, some marks on Matthew Terry's arm.
Yes.
Those marks there, I know you indicated you can't tell what type of knife caused it, but can you tell even if it was a knife that caused it?
It's just something sharp.
Sure. So it could have been even, let's say, some really sharp thorns in an area where someone was being on the ground attacked.
Yes, if those thorns had little parallel, they were arranged in a parallel manner or something close to that.
Okay.
Sure.
And I know that you said you had never gotten to see Matthew Terry in person.
No.
At the time, would you have been able to make more definitive conclusions?
Yes, like say the doctor who examined him would be.
Sure, always better to see somebody in person, right?
Of course.
Okay. And you indicated, of course, that you really can't say if it was self-inflicted. It's equally possible that it was inflicted by another person, right?
It's possible, yes.
Okay.
This is such important testimony because it really goes to the core of the defense's, explanation of what happened. I don't know about the whole, some thorns. Maybe he jumped through some thorns and got cut by this. What kind of thorns are going to make the wounds that we have heard talked about? Katherine Lizardo, what do you think? And tell me about what you think about the importance of the severity of any wounds. I keep circling back to this because I think this is the ball game really for the defense.
I agree, because the more severe the wounds are on the defendant, the more it renders credibility to their argument that it was not self-inflicted. If it's, the way the wound was presented, how deep it is. So their theory right now seems to be that there's another person there, like what Rich was saying. Or could they be also saying that maybe Kay Baker also inflicted some of the wounds on him? We don't know. And I'm wondering if they're going to put Matthew Terry on the stand to explain his side. We've seen how that has played out for some other defendants who testified on the stand.
I would definitely, I would watch that. I would definitely watch that. Richard, what do you think in terms of that? Maybe there was an altercation between the couple, and that's how he suffered the wounds that he did.
Well, it could be. I think Katherine's exactly right. She's pointing out that we really don't know what the defense says happened. And that's got to be something in the minds of the jury. It's one thing to question the evidence. We keep looking at these good clips, and the defense lawyers do a pretty good job here questioning the evidence. You don't know if that's a knife or a thorn. I'm surprised we don't know the difference between a knife and a thorn, but that seems to be a question.
Makes me wonder about the expertise, but anyway.
Right, but they're asking those questions. Well, you don't really know what happened, but at some point, the jury is going to want to hear from them. Maybe the defendant will testify. Maybe he won't, because if they open enough questions and they don't feel like they have to put the guy on, maybe they won't. And of course, we're getting to the big moment. Next week, we're going to get the testimony, right, of the ex-girlfriend and get into the whole prior attack. And that's really going to take us to another place in this case.
Yeah, that's a great point. And Katherine, I think, if you're the defense attorney, maybe you're waiting to see how that plays out to decide whether or not Mr. Terry should take the stand. Obviously, he has the autonomous right to do it if he wants to. What do you think? That's going to be such important testimony next week. Oh, by the way, this happened a few years ago, but that doesn't mean I do it with every girlfriend.
Most definitely, especially since the events and the way he attacked his former girlfriend is so similar to what happened here, how he bit his former girlfriend, stabbed her, and really almost murdered her. His former girlfriend, when she was placed on the stand to talk to the judge, she mentioned that she thought she was going to die there, and she had to take the knife away from him to save herself. Luckily, she did, and she survived. But he did serve, I believe, 3 or 4 years in jail and got out of that. So the uncanny facts that it's so similar to what happened to Kay Baker, that is so detrimental for his defense.
Yeah, it's going to be critical stuff, and that'll be next week when they get back at it. So, of course, we'll be on top of that. We'll continue to talk about this case and others through the afternoon. We're going to take a quick break here now, but let me tell you this. If you ever decide to commit a crime, I don't recommend it, but if you do, you got to be careful, because sometimes even the escape from that crime can be dangerous.